just run into the planet next door. They don't have that kind of hope. So where do we find ourselves? Well, we find ourselves in a moment in a world where technology is putting very many people out of love with being human. You start to feel like being human is bad news, not good enough, not even good at all. So they're therefore falling out of love with any achievement, such as the settlement of Mars, that would showcase what good news is to be human. Limits and all, warts and all. Nowadays, I think people who are in this way out of love with humanity and with Mars are likely, at most, to see the planet only as a robot would. It's just a resource to be turned into more energy for more machines. Unquestionably, this view of Mars as something non-living to serve the non-living, rather than a precious site to serve we living, expresses not a love for humanity, I'd say, but something approaching outright hate. Alarmingly, technology seems to be putting both powerful and ordinary people in a frame of mind that makes it impossible for them to see how settling Mars can redirect our powerful technological advancement away from the destruction of our humanity and toward the furtherance of all there is to love and to be grateful for about the good news of being human. So that's why my message is that a merely or a purely scientific case for settling Mars is really kind of likely to fail today, even though now, unfortunately, is the first time ever that we can go beyond just hoping to settle Mars, and we can actually do it. It isn't enough that we have the knowledge to do it, the skills to do it, or even the money to do it. It'll only be enough, I would submit it to you today, that we have the love to do it. A love of our humanity as something that's worthy of protection and flourishing. And a love of Mars as the one place, the only place in the entire universe, with apologies to Ganymede, where we can make a true second home for humankind and open the cosmos to a human destiny. These are intrinsically worthy goods. But in a world where machines have grown so powerful, but the choice is really now not whether they will rule, but how they will rule. Spreading human life and human homes beyond Earth is a necessity to the preservation of our human being in a salutary relationship with our machines. The task, then, I would invite you to consider, as I have another drink of water, is to supplement the science of settling Mars and the logic of technological progress behind it with the teachings of the humanities. But this is where we actually need to be the most careful. Marshall McLuhan, who I mentioned at the outset, was himself a doctor of English. 45 years ago, at Columbia University, he delivered a lecture entitled Art as Survival in the Electric Age. In that speech, McLuhan said the job of the artist is to upset all the senses, providing new vision and new powers of adjusting and relating to new situations. McLuhan took the humanities seriously as a supplement to science in preserving our humanity amid technological change. But today, of course, we are just hurtling at top speed away from the electric age and into the digital, where the terms of our survival will differ. McLuhan himself made compressed reference to this fact in his use of the computer as an illustration of technological obsolescence on the one hand and retrieval on the other. What digital technology retrieved, according to McLuhan, was, quote, perfect memory, total and exact. Not just as a phenomenon, but as one with the power to conform human life and experience to it. Now, at the Center for Digital Life, this insight of McLuhan's is used by me and some other folks to underscore that this foregrounding of memory brings with it a backgrounding of imagination. It doesn't mean the destruction of imagination. Imagination is never going away. But it does mean that memory is going to lead imagination rather than the other way around. For after all, it is imagination and not memory that defined the electric age and conformed human life to it, as those of you who lived through that time no doubt remember. Television the dominant technology of the electric age, is all about make-believe. It's all about presenting images in a way that organizes our attention and experience around the imaginary. Small wonder that the politics of the electric age were shaped accordingly, driven by abstract ideas that seized the imagination, and by the moving images of people who seemed to best embody or propagate those ideas. Consciousness expansion, drugs, rock and roll. These are all constitutive parts of the electric age of make-believe. Well, although we're now heading into the digital age, unfortunately, the loudest and most prominent critics of the anti-human thrust of technology seem to be pretty devoted adherents to this kind of hippie humanities idea that's lingering from the electric age we are departing. They're clinging to the electric age culture of make-believe that digital tech is busy obsolescing every minute of every day. So in his new prize-winning book, Against Dehumanizing Tech, which would seem to be promising, former Google strategist, Oxford-trained philosopher James Williams actually follows that kind of hippie humanities script very closely. He quotes David Bowie's Life on Mars. He cites Joseph Campbell's appeal to the mythos of the hero's journey. He approvingly recalls the street culture of San Francisco back in the 1960s. At its best, pleads Williams, technology opens our doors of perception. That's sort of like one of the key phrases of the electric age, right? Inspires awe and wonder in us, creates sympathy between us. We have to demand, he goes on, that these forces, to which our attention is now subject, start standing out of our light. Well-meaning stuff, but this would be protest movement that he and other prospective heroes of kind of hippie humanities vision would have to be. They fail to grasp that the era of seeking harmonious unity through the wonders of the imagination is already in the rearview mirror. That doesn't mean that our dreams are dead. It just means that increasingly, thanks to digital technology, our imagination is in service to memory rather than the other way around. Imagination will always be with us, but its deterministic hold on our psychological environment is being broken by the rule of digital tech. Its spell is being broken. Rather than psychedelic substances, occult rituals, mass music, or light-working spiritualism, the humanistic teaching we need to preserve ourselves in the digital era has more to do with what is and what was than with what can seem to be. The significance of Mars, present in our collective consciousness since the dawn of time, no longer simply speaks the language of cosmic fantasy. Today it speaks the language of cosmic duty, to recall and to embrace in human love the reality of our unique place in the universe. Digital tech has disenchanted this kind of humanitarian mysticism that's lingering on through the electric age by making identity and memory more powerful and more productive than opinion and than make-believe. Not only does this mean that we can no longer count on, as we used to, stories, myths, and inspirational imaginings to break people loose from their subhuman or superhuman dreams or nightmares. It means we can no longer count on images of what might be alone to inspire people to settle Mars. A vision of Mars as the destination of humanity's next great flight of fancy will forever exile a properly interplanetary future to the realm of illusion. Well, it would be nice if we could turn to science for some support in recovering artful teachings about staying true to who we are and have always been as human beings. But I am sorry to report that even science itself is now in danger of being dominated by a view of reality that's degenerating mysticism. The proof is in the new state of commentary on the problems with artificial intelligence. You may be reading these things yourself, online or off. Researchers increasingly admit that they don't really know how their AIs work. Sorry. Google researcher Ali Rami has warned that his field is now tantamount to alchemy, that hard science, with AI scientists unable to explain why certain algorithms work or don't, and engineering progress is measured in how well you can just summon forth some more black magic from your black box. Francois Chalet, a Google computer scientist, right there in front of you, describes the tendency of research now to, quote, gravitate around cargo cult practices with all the rigor of folklore and magic spells. I wish I could say this is an outlier in the way people think about science today. God knows, fortunately, we've got lots of good scientists who don't think that way. But AI mysticism is now the epitome of this reigning view of science that's called emergence theory. Scientists who adhere to emergence theory have more or less abandoned old-style commonsensical cause and effect, and now focus on the idea that things just sort of become more than the sum of their parts, somehow. Well, without digital technology, that emergence theory of reality reduces the practice of science to just kind of attentively waiting for things to happen, to inexplicably emerge out of this chaotic soup of events. But with digital technology, scientists can now busy themselves as mechanized mystics, iterating over and over again models that are way too complex to understand, but not too complex to track in real time using machine processing power far beyond the processing power of human brains. Well, I think this is fairly disturbing, because the result of this kind of mechanical mysticism is the rise of robot masters, for you Mega Man fans out there, guided only by the commandment of the Victorian occultist Aleister Crowley. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Here we are in Pasadena, so some of you will no doubt recall Crowley disciple Jack Parsons, principal founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory down the street over there, maybe that way. Did his level best to define our relation to the cosmos in accordance with his imaginary visions and his ritual derangement with our mother. It is tempting to separate the occultism of Crowley and Parsons from the seemingly more innocuous obscurantism of contemporary AI and emergence theory. But I believe that if we wish to properly settle Mars, we need to resist that temptation. Digital researchers who have lost touch with the sound understanding of the reality and the importance of our human being are now in real danger of succumbing to the worship of raw machine power, a lifeless power that rules over we the living by transforming reality into something indecipherable from illusion. As Henry Kissinger has recently put it, rule by machines with knowledge particular to themselves, applied to ends for which there may be no category of human understanding, is apt to make us go the way of the Incas, faced with a Spanish culture incomprehensible and even awe-inspiring to us. Humans reduced to this condition by their own machines will never settle Mars. Certainly not for the sake of humans. So, in truth, supplementing science with the humane teaching of love first requires a recovery of a truly human science, one in which the lifeless does not usurp the prided place of we the living. The fundamental question, which speaks the most deeply to the why of settling Mars, is therefore whether much of what has been dismissed in the past as mere philosophy or mere theology might in reality be much closer to the core of fully, truly human science. In Aristotle's biology and anthropology, to take just one example, the soul is not some bit of occult magic or mystical divine spark, but a definitive and constitutive characteristic of living creatures such as ourselves, without which we cannot understand who we are, who we have been, or how we have become that way. In the absence of such knowledge, how, I ask you, can we ever love who we are? If it's to happen at all, the settlement of Mars will be above all a human act of founding, a provision of new origins, a new law for a world itself quite new. And on that count, I'd like to leave you this evening with the words of my fellow theorist of foundings, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Any man, wrote Rousseau, any man may grave tablets of stone, or buy an oracle, or feign secret intercourse with some divinity, or train a bird to whisper in his ear, or find other vulgar ways of imposing on people. He whose knowledge goes no further may perhaps gather round him a band of fools. He will never found an empire, and his extravagances will quickly perish with him. Idle tricks form a passing time. Only wisdom can make it lasting. The Judaic law which still subsists, and that of the child of Ishmael, which for 10 centuries ruled half the world, still proclaim the great men who laid them down. And while the pride of philosophy or the blind spirit of faction sees in them no more than lucky impostures, the true political theorist admires, in the institutions they set up, the great and powerful genius which presides over things made to endure. Thank you.
Bravo.
I understand we have time for questions.
We do.
I would say go grab a coffee, but I think we're on. Are we out of coffee out there?
Yeah.
Water it is.
I think we can safely assume that in this huge universe, there are literally billions upon billions of species, intelligent species, that have developed technology, probably making our technology seem very primitive at best. Some of them probably destroy themselves through their technology, while others learn how to harness and use their technology to improve the lives, the values of their species. I'm asking you to speculate now. How do you think they did that?
Right. So this is a great question, and I've encountered some intelligent comment on these sorts of issues. I'm certainly not an expert in this field. There might be one in this room, but as far as I know, there's actually a very robust and fruitful debate going on among people trying to deal with these sorts of questions. Where the mystery is like, okay, well, if we're not alone in the universe, then where is everybody, right? Like, why haven't they shown up and just blown us off the earth, or brought us presents, or even just sort of pinged us from far away and said, we're over here, we killed ourselves either yet. And right, so one answer is, well, because we're really alone. One answer is like, well, we're not alone, but every other form of life is in this extraordinarily rudimentary stage, because even the life forms that are at the far edges of the universe, as far as we can reach them, we haven't heard anything from them either, so they've got to be way behind. Answer 3 is like, well, there were other intelligent life forms in the universe, but they killed themselves off, or they killed each other off, and so once again, we're alone. Those all strike me as plausible, but they also strike me as in some way like sad and worrisome, sort of like a grim verdict on what we're likely to do to ourselves, even with the best of intentions. To the point of your question, right, I think that any civilization out there somewhere beyond the purview of Earthlings, I think they must have figured out how to direct their technological energy and effort into spreading their life beyond their own planet. I think a certain level of technological development that stays sort of cooped up on one planet, and it's probably more or less going to be an Earth-sized planet, I think, right? Like there probably isn't going to be like some Earth-like planet that's the size of the sun, probably. That's a lot of tech and a lot of mental pressure for such a small space, especially if you have a decent population on that planet. And moving that energy away from just tunneling inward or sort of developing these insane delusions of grandeur, if you're going to remain in the natural world and develop your technology, I think you got to expand it beyond your own planet. And so I would, you know, my wager would be that that's what they've done to stay alive, and I'd like to keep on pushing for the same for us.
Don't you think that a lot of the political unrest, you know, the malaise you speak of, the disillusionment with mysticism is based on people's sense that we're not progressing like we did, felt like we were in the space age. And, you know, what's going on politically now is mostly about disruption and bringing about disruptive processes. Life is full of sound and fury signifying nothing, if not disruption. So wouldn't you, I think your idea about going to Mars is spot on, because it finally connects the mysticism of Bradbury and Roddenberry, you know, the idea that, well, we'll become, we'll become the aliens, we'll become the Martians, and we'll ennoble in life and other planets. And so I support your approach, and I suggest that if there are aliens, they're already among us now, and they're very intelligent, and we'll get the, as H.G. Wells pointed out, we'll get the aliens we deserve, not the ones that we really want, you know, or we can see that we can get the aliens that we can work with, which may be occupying us in ways we don't understand now.
Well, that's right, and I appreciate your comments, and I would add that despite the political chaos and frankly just mass murder that characterized the electric age, the technological progress was a very clear, direct line. Going from Kitty Hawk to the moon landing, something that happened within living memory at the time. And so, from that standpoint, you think, well, of course we're going to be just fooling around the solar system, within another 10 or 20 years. And obviously, that didn't happen. And the why of that not happening, and the how of that not happening, I'm sure historians will kind of haggle over that for some time, but I think it's undoubtedly had a profound effect on our psychological, technological environment.
Well, don't you remember we had the images from 2001 of the space baby at the end? It's a kind of a vision of technological rebirth.
Yes,
right?
The space baby.
Yeah, the space baby. And my grandmother, rest her soul, who saw Kitty Hawk and saw the moon landing, famously said, "Oh, since they landed on the moon, the weather's never been the same."
Well, first of all, just as a technical note, one reason why we haven't detected ET is possibly because the SETI people are continuing to look for alien broadcasts in S-band radio, which was state of the art in 1960, but which became obsolete here by around 1990, and we don't even use it anymore. So, transitory technology. But the question I have to give is this. Where are we on? Just recently, NASA philosopher Linda Billings published an article in which she said that humanity was not worthy of going to other planets and being on other planets. And I would like to hear your response to that.
Well, I don't know if I'm sorry to have missed that remark or glad to have missed it. Was there any gloss on what made us such pathetic and undeserving creatures?
The usual.
Oh, we're just like bad.
We're bad for the environment.
Oh, okay, so we're a scourge, right? We're like a plague that would metastasize over the cosmos and uplify it.
Right.
With our love and our families and friendships and institutions and everything. Yeah. Ugh, gross. Right? Who wants that? This is bad stuff, man. This is nihilism. It is love of nothingness, and it is going to do us affirmative harm. It's already doing us harm on the internet, where people are just like scrolling, like this salt mine is just scrolling, hoping that something not boring and enervating is going to just like pop up and flash before their eyes, and it's not even real. It's just like pitch flashes around. And then when you take that kind of emptiness of soul and you project it out into, you know, every other place that humans could ever live ever within this dimension, right? I can't see any good coming from that. And, you know, frankly, that's the cancer, not us human beings. Good heavens. Yeah.
All right, so
You've got the mic, you ask.
yeah, it's kind of a token. All right, next. I love your talk. I think that there's a word I didn't hear, or it's been nagging at me a lot, and it's the idea of frequent mass gatherings. You know, I think about what really signifies love beyond filial and romantic and friend bonds, and what really drives people to sacrifice significant parts of their resources, time, money to a cause. And I think about how many people are here and how we are gathering once a year, very scattered around the world. And we manage to meet once a year and pull together into a group, a physical group, and share a significant amount of passion about this. But then I think about what amount of passion is signified by other activities that humans do outside their home. And it really comes down to just a few things that get us to get together in masses. We either need a financial incentive. We all, you know, hundreds of thousands of us contributed to the moon landing because we had a job and related to it. And so we went 5 days a week, 7 days a week for years and made it happen. So clearly large numbers very frequently dedicate themselves to it. You get people that are in religions, they meet weekly for their lives in the groups of hundreds, within concentrations of hundreds within a portion of the town. So clearly a density that gets political attention and makes things happen and signifies a real force of love beyond filial, familial, romantic bonds. So when we want to get to Mars, we can't fill stadiums weekly the way that the NFL can and get people to pay $100 a pop 17 times a season to go out and do something, or to go to church 50 times a year, you know, or to go to work on a project 5 times a week, you know, for thousands of days in a row. How are we getting to Mars? And then I think about your word love. And I guess for me, I'm wondering how many of us are actually thinking about the science of impassioned people at that scale. We can motivate them with money, but there's not enough money to do that, apparently. We can get people to do that with religion, but we're afraid to, because we've seen throughout the 20th century what experiments lead to when we try to build religion intentionally. I'll run Hubbard again. So how do we get, you know, hundreds of thousands of people to dedicate themselves to love? And I just wonder what your thoughts are about where the role comes in of frequent, impassioned, mass, dense group gatherings in creating this duty of love.
FMGs. I like it. Yeah, it's a great question, and you know, I would associate myself with your view on that. I think, you know, striking that contrast between like mass and critical mass might be helpful, right? Like the electric age was like, I don't care if you're Hitler or like Copernic or, you know, Bono, like you pack the stadium to capacity. And it was all about just reaching mass, maximum mass, right? It wasn't really a critical mass project. And I think that, you know, the era of that sort of like mass participation where the individual just kind of merges into this block, you know, I think that's probably in the rear view. And I think that more of the sort of like organic groundswell of groups of people who reach a critical mass, like the right mass that's needed in order to carry out whatever their project or enterprise is. I think that's kind of where we're headed. You know, my book, The Art of Being Free, is kind of my treatment of Aloysius de Tocqueville, author of Democracy in America. And he said, you know, this was before the Civil War. He said, you know, the only way that you're going to draw people out of the enclosures of their own hearts is by the reciprocal action of one upon the other. And I think that's, I think that's anthropology, it's not some French guy's idea that he had one day. And I'm gonna mention Burning Man here. I feel maybe powerless not to mention Burning Man here, because I think like this is kind of one of those things, right? Where it has reached its critical mass and it has been kind of this organic like groundswell thing. But I think there's maybe like a fork in the road coming up for Burning Man, right? Like, is it really going to be all about like performatively looking like super hot in the desert and like taking so many drugs, and then you like have this occult ceremony where everyone ignites this like, flaming idol? Is it going to be that? Or is it going to be kind of like the other Burning Man that's somewhere in there, where it's really about like maintaining these relationships with people that are so strong over time that you can take them to a place where there's nothing and create everything, right? They're like these two kind of eras that are right now kind of sometimes elegantly and sometimes very messily trying to mush together in Burning Man. And I feel like one of those is going to kind of have to give more than the other over time. And maybe that'll just result in kind of like 1,000 different kind of social experiments in working that problem until it gets some purchase. Maybe that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. You would comment on it. The comment is, we're a very, very impatient species. We're living in a place that was created 13.5 billion years ago. Living on a planet that was created 4.5 billion years ago. We're a species of Homo sapiens that's probably only 100,000 years old. We went to the moon 50 years ago. We are sitting here in a vertical 90-degree singularity slope, and we are moaning and crying at this moment that we haven't gotten to Mars yet. It seems preposterous, utterly preposterous, if you put it in geologic time. So that's the first comment. The question I have for you is this in regard to technology. 2 observations. One, and please comment on 2 extremes. One is virtual reality. We'll get to the point where not only 3 of the 5 senses will be reproduced. We now have sight and sound. We can imagine it won't be too long that we'll have touch. We can imagine it won't be long when we'll put on a set of glasses like are in there. And not only will we be able to see NDRS, we'll be able to see Mars and feel Mars, and maybe even smell Mars. We'll be able to do all of that in striking 3-dimensional virtual reality. So striking that maybe the lust to go there will be depleted. I don't know. That's what technology can do to really abate the desire to go to Mars. On the other extreme, seeing in person an 85-year-old couple, Korean couple, put on a virtual reality headset and travel to their hometown in Korea, and literally their jaws drop. The first time they ever put this on. They walk down the streets where they grew up. And I can easily see a situation where bedridden, terminally ill people who never get out of a house, never travel, can travel anywhere they want. And in addition to their lives would be staggering to do that. So these are 2 extremes. And comment on what you think that will do to what we've been talking about.
Right. So we are certainly an impatient lot, us human beings. Love sounds great, right? Especially like nowadays. Love is everything. Kindness is all that matters. And, that sounds so nice, right? But then you say like, oh, love, like love is patient, right? Oh, patience. That's not very easy. You don't get that sort of like instant gratification. Like, I'm a good person because I love. Well, sometimes it means being really patient and suffering. Sometimes it means waiting, being patient and waiting. We're probably not going to get rid of that feature in our human condition. This kind of oftentimes torturous tension between wanting it all and wanting it now, and then somewhere back there, there's the little voice that says like, well, you know, everything that you can have instantly has limits. It can oftentimes leave you cold. It can oftentimes be fleeting. It can oftentimes, you know, betray you in ways that you don't anticipate or recognize because you're so focused on getting it now. One, I think, manifestation of our ongoing attempts to wrestle with that tension is this longing for technologies like virtual reality that would seem to give us everything about reality but the reality. You know, it's like, well, if I can't have, you know, if I can't go to my childhood home, or if I can't go to Mars right now, I can at least like pretend really convincingly that I'm doing it right now. If that impulse runs away with itself, you know, pretty scary and harmful things can happen. You know, I'm sure plenty of people in this room have watched at least one episode of Black Mirror. We all know this stuff is like, we all know what our buttons are as humans, and we know what kinds of horrible things can happen when we allow ourselves or other people to push those buttons and control us, and enslave us to these appetites that are within us and will probably never go away. That said, though, right, you know, like, I hope that it was clear from my talk that I don't think imagination is toast. I just think we're headed into an era where imagination is going to have to be sort of the handmaiden, bloated word, I'm sorry, of memory, rather than the other way around. So, you know, think of virtual reality, like an experience where you're putting a headset on and having your jaw drop because, you know, you're watching, like, the first 10 human beings on Mars. Right? That's going to be a powerful experience where your imagination is being activated. The imagination isn't leading. The imagination is in service of a recognition that we exist in a reality together, and that reality needs to be processed through reference to who we are and who we've always been. You know, virtual reality can also be like, I'm going to like watch dolphins have sex for a week because like the outside world has no meaning to me and I have these like weird desires and I'm going to disappear, right? It could go either way, and it remains to be seen whether there's even going to be a true audience for virtual reality as we think there might be. I mean, like, you know, 3D television, I think was going to be a thing for a minute, but nobody cared. It remains to be seen, and the more courageously we're willing to make the real world a place worth being, the more competition virtual reality will have.
Okay, so we're running a little late, but it's okay because the people who I thought we were going to have for this panel on how you could try to make something useful out of the NASA Moon program aren't here, and because it's a difficult subject and kind of depressing. So we're going to go straight to the movie. Okay, so Jim Burke, you've got it set up. You ready to go? So this movie, it was put in the program as seat 24. It's actually seat 25. That's significant because it's a different movie. And it's a movie made in Britain. It's an independent movie. It's gotten some pretty good reviews. It actually hasn't come out yet. Okay, so we're seeing it before it came out. And it's about a woman who's planning on immigrating to Mars. So let's see. Oh, yes, all right, play it.
There's also an intro by the director that wants to give us a message.
Yeah, that's a shirt. Oh, I did, okay, yes. Which shirt was it? It's a white shirt. Oh, that's right. The dress you want. Should I pick up two more for you? Yes. I might get there late.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Agnew. I'm the director of Seek25. Thanks so much for coming to see the screening this evening. We're really privileged to be showing at the convention, and thank you so much to Rob Zuberman for inviting us. I'm really sorry that we can't be with you this evening, but we're all the way over in the UK and it wasn't possible, but I really hope you enjoyed the film. Myself and Madeline Cook, who's my co-writer and producer on Seek25 and also plays Spain, are real advocates for putting humans on Mars. It's a bit of a passion for us. And in this film, what we try to do is to show how the scale of a mission to Mars can actually be scaled down to a very personal level, and how something that's significant as a mission to Mars and the reasons behind that can be applicable to every human life on the planet, no matter what's going on. So as I say, I hope you enjoy the film, and if you have any questions or comments or would like to discuss anything with us, we'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch with us via the website at seek25.com or on Facebook or on Twitter. Thanks very much.
We were all very excited about Mars. Scientists had proved the existence of liquid water on its surface. A year later, we were all even more excited by the news that the Martian atmosphere was warming. Everyone was talking about Mars. And then, nothing. The rapidly strengthening magnetic fields created a deficit. There were no signals from our satellites, no transmissions from our rovers. Nothing. So, in 12 months' time, the Brilliant Enterprises will be launching Initiative 1. 25 incredible pioneers will journey to humanity's new frontier. 12 women, 12 men, and here's the interesting thing. Seat 25, the one-way ticket to a new life on a new world. One of you, wonderful people, will be the winner of Seat 25. If you think you deserve this chance, then contact me. Let me know why. And to all of you who choose to apply, I say, the very best of luck.
This is Faye, or Faye Banks. This is her life, or at least her life so far. Faye remembers she didn't always feel like this. But what this is and how she used to feel, she isn't quite sure anymore. This is Jim, Faye's husband. Jim tries very hard, carefully planning the route his life is going to take. Comfortable with the truth that hard work will be rewarded. Jim wasn't always like this. He used to be very different. Faye and Jim moved into this house 3 years ago. But until quite recently, she didn't notice how the magnolia walls meet their cream curtains against their pale rock in what is now their beige life. And every morning, while waiting for our coffee to brew, dreaming of terracotta red, azure blue, and emerald green, Faye finds herself drawn into the colourful world created by next-door neighbour Peter and his little daughter Flossie. The small child seemed to Faye a supernova of blazing colours, and Peter was the star at the centre of the universe. Peter and Flossie spent their mornings exploring the Amazon rainforest, lunchtimes picnic on Bradford's Islands, and afternoons deep sea diving on the Great Barrier Reef. Having given up smoking some time ago, Peter was finding it increasingly difficult to hide his habit from his wife.
I cannot believe you! Peter, you absolute scumbag!
June is the manager of the local leisure centre, and since employing Adrian 6 months ago, has found an increasing number of problems for which she needs Adrian's personal assistance. As her eyes trace the shape of his morning, she experiences the feelings of lust and desire that have been missing from her life for so long. Every morning at 11 minutes past 8, Faye passes her work colleague, Ted or Pesky. Having politely refused to lift work, Faye and Ted are now left with what seems like their only remaining option, a slightly awkward way home. As he stands willing his bus never to arrive, and his day never to begin, his thoughts inevitably fall to the utter pointlessness of it all. Faye's journey to work affords her an average of 17 minutes twice a day, but she fails, wandering at the life of total strangers. At around the same time every day, Faye's father Ted and his new wife Maggie take coffee and the newspapers on their patio. Having spent years striving to make taste of the Mediterranean to the southeast of England, Terry and Maggie have taken early retirement to start a new life on the Costa del Sol. Faye's sister Pandora recently returned from Kenya, where she might have been found feeding starving children, or building an orphanage. Adventurer, explorer, and eternal backpacker, Pandora is back home and enjoying a well-earned rest. Faye works in the Human Resources Department at the local council. She was recently promoted and is now in charge of performance assessment and efficiency layoffs.
So I'm taking a big punt on you here.
More money, more responsibility. You mean?
Yes, okay, fine. As I'm sure you're aware, we're under increasing pressure to find savings within the council. By streamlining the department, we plan to build some of our work. We want you to see this as an opportunity rather than a setback. Although Faye has come to terms with that, she has little in common with her colleagues. She still finds herself waiting an extra 5 minutes in order to avoid the morning coffee rush. As Faye took in the solitary figure of her colleague Terrafroming, it occurred to her she might not be entirely alone. It is well known amongst the office clique that Terrafroming is a pervert. Since daring to try and dance with Sonia at the Christmas party last year, his fate within his tight-knit pack of employees has been decided. What isn't well known is that for the past year, Riley has taken secret shots of his female colleagues and posted them anonymously online under the pseudonym Stalker Steve. Having never been invited to eat lunch with her colleagues, Faye eats on the same park bench every day. Looking down at her application, a familiar feeling came bubbling up to her chest. A feeling she tried to ignore for some time now. A feeling that, really, there ought to be more than this. This is the life Faye has weaved for herself. One tiny web lost amongst billions of other tiny webs, all covering a vast planet. And most of the time, the biggest spider catches the fly. Every now and then, Faye takes a chance to one lucky soul. Yes?
It's Michael Polulos. I'm just calling to say congratulations. How are you feeling? Pretty overwhelmed, I'm sure. Well, listen, don't worry about anything. Just let it all sink in, and someone will be over to see you in the next few days. You did it, Faye. I'll see you soon.
Faye, you're going to be late. Right, see you later.
Just so you know, someone's getting a formal complaint about old Taylor Pesky at the Christmas parties. Please see if Pauline and both had enough of his attitude as well, so we're going to put it down. Got me eating bags this afternoon if you look what in. What are you doing standing there? You're not ready yet. You don't know how to bounce up the path.
Jim, I've got something to tell you.
That was the rest with Lady Anne. Now, with the winner of seat 25 due to be announced any day now. Today's winner is Oceans on Mars. Science fiction or science fact? Well, scientists really like.
You okay there?
Yeah, just work stuff on some nails today.
It's not just that, though, is it? I know what you're thinking. I don't even worry about it. I think we should start trying for a bit. So what are you talking about yourself? I've been thinking about it for a while. It's the next logical step. That's what we've been missing. You feel better?
So, I'd say I've probably seen half the world by now. But I think it's my emotional center that's really grown on this last trip. I mean, actually being able to reach out and touch someone in person. You can't get that kind of perspective unless you feel it. Oh, it's just a picture, it's what we do. I got like home from my back.
Okay, tell them to be careful.
I mean, I was trying to say, come on, hey, I gave it a national event.
Would you mind being a bit more careful with these boxes? They are pretty expensive. Sorry. Has Pandora been telling you all about her trip to Africa? Isn't she wonderful?
I did worry about her catching in the moon.
You actually should get out of house.
Perhaps I know about it for Fermi.
So, who was the victim?
Oh, God, you're such an idiot.
Thanks, babe. Wait till you go to celebrate, then you finally decide to be a grandchild. We're looking at parents.
She's not even pregnant.
Let's have a drink.
Why you doing what?
A pop. I want to celebrate. Oh, the two arms. Glasses packed.
Love you.
I love the bag. She's time for a baby.
The search for the winner of C25 is over. Novella Enterprises confirmed today that the applicants, chosen from over 700,000 workforce, has been informed, although their identity is being kept private for the time being. With limited information on the state of the developing atmosphere, nobody knows the explosive effects of lakes and seas. Or about it.
As I'm sure you're aware, we are under increasing pressure to find savings within the council. Its department has been under review for the last few months, looking to increase our efficiency within. I'm so sorry, Kate. There have been complaints made by certain people here. There was a meeting.
I know.
You could dispute this. It could help you.
Why would I do that? I know what people here think of me. I've had the same job for 10 years. I'm lucky.
I'm sorry, Taylor, but you've got to the end of the day. You're going to be okay.
Of course.
Are you worried about anything?
No. Thank you for the lift. Bye.
Bye.
Good timing to try that. How's your dad? Hey, what's wrong?
It's not Sunday. I'm not very happy anymore.
What's happening? Is it down here?
Since Monday, it's like you can't look at me. It's like a family.
But I'm we're two halves of the same person.
You cheat.
Hello?
Hello?
You okay?
Yeah.
I'm Peter.
Hi. I'm Fred.
What are you doing?
I'm looking at Mars.
Did you see it from here?
I've got a telescope.
How does it look?
Mars.
Yeah. Don't say it's right.
It's beautiful. Small. But it's the only planet in our solar system whose surface features you can really see through a telescope. It's pretty blurry most of the time, but if you wait long enough, thermal currents in our Earth's atmosphere clear for just a few seconds. It's breathtaking. We can see shadows and black clouds. We used to be able to see the polar caps, but they're gone, of course.
Wow. I've never heard anyone describe it like that before.
Sometimes I like to think I can make out clouds and weather systems, but no one's sure of that yet. It's amazing. 100 years ago, astronomers were looking up at canals, convinced that intelligent life was living there. And here we are now, looking up at that same planet, convinced that any time now would be absolutely there.
Well, what did you do after this night?
Jane Peter.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Is that alright?
Okay. Why?
Oh, it's might be nice though. We've been there nearly 3 months, and I've made it, okay?
Okay. You doing your chicken thing?
Of course. There you go, it's nearly 7:45. See you soon.
Hello, Mr. Anderson. It's Faye Ants here. I'm really sorry, but I'm not really feeling myself today. I'm not going to be able to make it to work. Sorry. Bye.
Oh, hello.
I found this. Dr. Jones might like it.
Look, Fuzzy. This is for you. Thanks, mate. It's a nice surprise. Thanks for inviting us over tonight.
That's okay. Be nice.
You're working today?
I should be really. Maybe keep it hush-hush tonight.
Yeah, sure. What are you up to for the rest of the day?
Nothing at all, actually.
Well, it looks like me and Flossie are going into space.
Sounds great.
Not doing anything more than the Jones. Flossie does that.
Yeah. Okay. What would you do if you had the chance to go to Mars?
In the hard C-35.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot to lose.
So you wouldn't go?
I'm not in that position to make that choice.
Hello.
I'm sorry, the front door was open. I hope you don't mind me being here.
I'll shut the door. Please sit down, sit down. Let me tell you, sit down. Would you like to pray?
Thank you.
Hope you don't mind me coming to see you. Been thinking about you. I've done that a few times, wondering how you are.
That's very comforting.
As you may play the cello.
Oh, I don't think you. I tried, it was lifted.
Who's the one with the photographs?
That's Megan, my wife. She died some time ago.
I'm so sorry.
In our home country, she was a professional cellist. I persuaded her to come to England to follow her dream. In the end, that was a mistake. She never found success here.
Did you ever think about returning home?
Life has a way of jumping. Before we knew it, 10 minutes had passed. After so much time, it's difficult to change.
You must miss her.
In some ways, I'm pleased she's not here to see me now, to see what's become of me.
I'll tell you, though, I felt so terrible about letting you go.
Not at all. It was probably what I needed.
Are you going somewhere, Terrafroming?
Yes, I sort of would.
Will you be seeing your family?
I think so.
How long will you be gone?
I have no idea. I may never come back.
About all your possessions?
I have no interest in any of this stuff anymore.
Wife's cello and photographs.
That instrument is not my wife. I don't see her when I look at it. And when I try to play it, I'm not holding it. But when I hear music, I can hear her.
I'm thinking of going away too.
I something good eventually. Somewhere nice, I hope.
I hope so.
I used to be just unlike you. I thought I had all the time in the world. Then one day I caught myself in the mirror, actually heard my biological clock ticking. It was awful. No one wants to be an old mom, do they? So I made a swift decision and got pregnant.
You talked about
No. Hey, what's this? Nothing.
You're trying for a baby.
Really? No, I never guessed.
What do you think?
Good. Such a horror stories then. Did I ever tell you about my agonizing 72-hour birthing nightmare? Posted all over Facebook.
You do.
People loved it. I don't know. You should do the same thing.
I bet it's in Facebook.
Oh, Peter's the same. I think it's so weird. So, most women are only on Facebook so they can spy their husbands.
Well, that's fine. Why are you on there?
Why indeed? Because they don't need to slam bigger. Just jack all the thing about that. Some people spend all day working. Some people who have a boring job need their face at the break of day.
Nobody loves it. But you should know anyone who wants to demonstrate. I value it.
Oh, yeah. So you're going to send fails to work after baby born, are you?
Of course not. Sorry, I can't.
God, you are so lucky, Faye. You'll be able to relax away from work. You got people the moms who they talk and wander around mother care and out really cute little outfits.
They were just born from like their way. My beautiful wife, my great kid, just sitting at home waiting for me to come back from work. I mean, it's really isn't it? What do you mean?
Don't think that's what they want.
Of course that's what she wants. That's what normal people want. Not everyone's out there like as excused as wasn't.
Well, I mean, it's also course, isn't it? I'm sure whatever works for you.
It doesn't work for me pizza, it works for pizza.
Think about enough to drink to.
Oh, wow. Thank you for keeping an eye on it, please. Yeah. As long as it's liberal, you have one more job telling me what to do. Oh, do what? Jules, you try me for a bit. You should know more than that.
what should go for a basic one,
For Peter.
for Peter, that's a gift. Jim's gonna read how Peter's a wet fish. How they were in the first place, I've got no idea. So it's one example.
We started this together at Brennan Park.
So we got else as well, then.
Do you know, I don't ever want to end up like that.
Put yourself together, Maggie.
What's wrong, Maggie? You've got to what's wrong. My mother died. I wanted to die too.
I told you, Maggie, I'm not spending £2,000 to ship a hobby outfit over to Spain. You're going to get a nice new one, and maybe I'll have a decent night's sleep for the first time in 10 years. My anthology. What's that was it? One, Jim, Christ, how many times, boy? You've got a blind Ben coming up in second. You need to come back to me. Tell me what I come back for, Jim. Business runs itself. I'm getting football on Sky Sports. Food's better over there. Weather's better over there. At least I'm speaking English to be understood over there.
Do you know I'm working?
Right, so we've got English neighbours. There's the bloody luxury.
Certainly take it again, used to. I mean, I haven't heard a single English letter over there yet. Oh, Louis Smart. It's like, I'll have to come back to the end and shopping. You'll need this. Let me see that.
Oh, I this is something.
And we're talking again about 625, and I'm thrilled to announce we will have Michael and Gibson joining us here.
Well, Terrence, I can't get over that selfish attitude. Do you think you can ask me how I feel about him taking early retirement? What am I supposed to do now? He doesn't seem to care that I don't know if I said. You both have jobs, you can afford a mortgage. I don't work and he hasn't done anything to help.
Oh, the Bible said what's not right.
We can help you get a job, man. And then we can look for something you can.
I don't want a job today. I don't like you. I don't As if I had come to you right now.
If the middle wants to raise massive alarms, why doesn't he go himself? Good question. And Helen from East Coast tweets, as long as my taxes don't end up being spent for drinking 25 rocky bodies from Mars, it's all right with me.
I reckon down in the States is like the worst bit, right? Even though everyone else is middle, so can you imagine it? You know, you tell me your eyes sweet and you've got some friends and then you tell me blue.
I don't think that's very likely, man.
It is, isn't it?
So that can happen.
And so I have to try exercise and your arms first things.
Jesus Christ. Sounds like every bloody brain.
No, you have to be really selfish. You know, most of them are leaving wives and children when they turn to
What?
I don't feel them.
There'll be a certain section on the right of it.
Claire, please, Tim.
Concepts in science, medicine, technology, these are the things that will be firing these great people. These explorers may be felt deep isolation. They may be disillusioned about their thoughts and technique, but these are people who care deeply about humanity. These people won't be thinking about what they're producing, but about what they're gaining. This mission isn't about running away. It will be an opportunity for them to fall in one with life.
Where are you going?
Please, Jim, stop following me.
Why? What's happening?
Go away.
Fine.
Jim!
You're pathetic.
I hated you.
No, you're not. I know what the hell is wrong with you, but I said it.
It's not about you.
What the hell is wrong with you? I've always been there for you. I mean, where are your friends? Where are your family? When will people that this is how you treat me?
Sorry.
But that's not good enough. Things are going to change.
I don't know how to change.
Hello, Faye. My name is Jean. I'm from Occult Enterprises. Can I come in? representative like me. I'm sorry you didn't see him today, I'm afraid he doesn't like to leave the hard much anymore. Unfortunately, the press managed to get information about our competition winner, and well, at this moment, you're finding out that it is you who will find seat 25. Now, I'm sure you are aware that the ticket you have recently won is extremely valuable and must be treated accordingly. Do you realize how many people would want to take that ticket from you then? How much that ticket could be worth? Well, if you're happy with that, I'd like to briefly talk about the contract environment. At the moment, you can only show tickets in our action class, and we have no obligations to take return. Of course, we are extremely open to those from us, and so we are inviting you to a private meeting this Friday at 1:30. All okay? You may feel alone in your today, but you're certainly not. Do you understand? Goodbye then, Faye. We are all so looking forward to getting to know you better. Yes, as we expected. Not to worry. If you have any problems, just let us know. You know where we are. Goodbye then, Faye. And was actually all the crews. It's a question that you got almost seems crap. Okay, coffee. Yes. The BBC reckon who's on the C25 thing? We're about to announce it, apparently. No, it's fine.
And in parentheses to use, the identity of the C25 competition winner is finally being revealed. We've had our information confirmed by many enterprises, but just had a personal announcement.
Okay. You know the Fermi was standing in the driveway?
And so,
Hello? What are you doing? Go away. Just the fight with me, cheap cow.
What you don't really want to see 25 for me. You don't see me mistake. Oh, one day. Everyone's going to learn how to shit. You haven't told shit? Bloody hell, Faye. You decide to go to Mars forever, and you forget so important. Here's my favorite. She just had to fight with her. He's just touched around in bed. Come on, baby. I don't think I'm not here.
where is she?
Seth?
What the hell is going on there? Is it true? Just tell me, is it true?
Yeah.
Christ!
Listen.
Not do this! Do you know how humiliating this is to me? Were you trying to make me look stupid?
No, I'm not trying to tell you. I've been trying to tell you.
Tell me what? What, you fucking flying up to the other side of the solar system? For what? Oh, holiday! What is going on here? Stupid little headworld! This is a marriage day!
I'm not happy.
So am I! You don't make me happy, Faye! You make no attempt to make me happy!
I tried. It's not that I don't care.
Don't you dare try to make up for this is somehow my fault!
No, this isn't always fault. This just isn't working anymore.
Hey, come back!
Oh, no. Something. I don't know. All my kids are in the window, came from a light thing. That's the shop around. And I suppose it's working for computer games. How do you know? So you did work then, and the nice thing around here. What made you do that? That's the way to go. Excuse me, DC call. Can I have a quick word, please? I saw you up at the door there. Are you a family member? No, we're not together. He's a friend. And you are? Faye Banks. When was the last time you saw Mr. Massey? I saw him 2 minutes ago, but he was meant to be leaving today. Leaving? He was going to see his family. Family? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but Mr. Massey died in the early hours of yesterday morning. It doesn't make any sense. Do you get the impression he was unhappy about anything? I don't know. Said he was going home. You mentioned your work colleagues, is that right? Yes, we were actually for the council, but he never quite recently. I see. And Mr. McCaskey told you he was going to visit his family, is that right? Yes. Right. Only Mr. McCaskey didn't have any family. Mr. McCaskey didn't have any family. Mr. McCaskey told you he was going to visit his family, is that right? Yes. Right. Only Mr. McCaskey didn't have any family. 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 Mr. M
was so remarkable about Helen Sharman. Not only was she the first person in space, she was also a woman. How many of you girls made such an impression? Isn't he wonderful?
I don't know what you're saying. I know it's not science, but it's a job. Hey, where have you been? I'm leaving.
Yes. I never for a moment thought they'd choose me. But now they have. I have to go. I'm so sorry.
Remember when we first met?
Yes. It's that traffic light party and thing with Ziggy's back in here.
No, it wasn't. No, it was Diane's party when she had a giant chocolate horse. I remember I made Phil because he was trying to pull Diane.
Totally forgotten about that.
He was so quiet, shy back then. She must have said something that really pissed you off. Because she slapped the horse's head. Phil always blamed you for never getting him down. Don't go.
I do love you, Jim. Hi, Peter.
Right. Is it true? You going to Mars?
Yeah.
Bugger me. So where are you going?
Pretty soon, to the train.
We'll miss you.
I'll miss you too. And Flossie.
Are you sure you'll miss me?
Barely. I just know I have to go.
How did you take it?
Difficult. But he's...
You don't have to go away to Mars to run away from it.
What?
You're giving up on everything. Life would still be good for you here.
I made up my mind, Peter.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess this is goodbye.
Oh, yeah. Keep in touch.
Yeah. Of course.
Yesterday, I like 900 new followers, which was that. And Maggie called last night. She said that was really disappointed in you. Don't worry, I'll call.
Faye's journey to work affords her an average of 17 minutes twice a day, which she fills wandering the life of total strangers. What are their hopes? What are their fears? Are they happy? With Faye's life now stretching so far ahead of her, the empty faces staring back at her made her feel as if she was looking at our world from a great distance. Her former colleagues now served only to remind her of the total insignificance of everything. That no matter what, the earth will keep turning. This is the story of an ordinary one. But like all ordinary people, she's capable of doing something extraordinary. This is Faye, or Faye Banks. This is her life, or at least her life so far.
Hello, great girl.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Taylor.
No, the pleasure's all mine. Faye, you are extraordinary. Your application moved me incredibly. You remind me of me when I was a boy, looking out at Mars, totally convinced that one day we would be standing on the surface. I am so proud to meet you today. You are prepared to face the adventure despite the risks. And I wasn't a little touched that you are putting your trust in me. But how are you feeling?
nauseous, guilty.
I can't pretend to understand how difficult this must be for you.
If I'm honest, I can't see why you chose me. I'm not sure I have to offer. You say that I'm brave and extraordinary. But I don't feel any of that.
And yet, here you are, in spite of every obstacle. Can you imagine how many people would buckle by that? I can. The journey is nothing fair. It is always the first step, which is the hardest.
12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1.
This is the final transmission from the interplanetary craft Initiative 1, approaching the horizon of the Martian electromagnetic anomaly. We leave the Earth behind with hope for its future. As we pass into silence, we take with us the voice of humanity. To our families and loved ones, we send our hope. This is Initiative 1.